By now, I've had plenty of time to play around with BitBoy's PocketGo. It's a great little portable emulation solution, but it's definitely not perfect, and its flaws have people wondering if they maybe should spring for something a little bit more expensive, like, say, the PSPgo. The white one I love the look of the white one, but it shows up so bad in video. Okay, how about this? People have been asking me all over to compare these two, and I don't think it's just because they share the Go in the name. So, how do these stack up against one another? Let's take a look. Okay, so I resisted making this video for a little while because these two devices have very different price points. While the PocketGo can be had for under 50 bucks, the PSPgo goes for closer to 100. I could have made the comparison with the regular PSP instead, which is quite a bit cheaper, but the size is so different that I felt that the PSPgo would make for a better comparison, and I think that's why people are asking specifically to compare these two. Though, since the PSPgo is basically the regular PSP with built-in storage, an irreplaceable battery, slide-out mechanism, and Bluetooth support, everything I say about the PSPgo really goes for the regular PSP. The main difference, really, is the form factor. Alright, so let's look at the PocketGo first. So the PocketGo is pretty decent. It's, like I said in the beginning, and I mentioned this in my review, it's definitely not perfect, but it's good enough at what it does for the price they charge. It does pretty good Game Boy emulation, GBA emulation, NES emulation is good, Sega Genesis emulation isn't bad, but where it really struggles is SNES emulation. It'll run some SNES games okay, for sure, but you should probably not get it if SNES is the main system you're looking to emulate. You're probably going to be disappointed with a couple of titles. Like I mentioned in my review, it also emulates PS1. Where is the PS1 here? I can't see the screen from the way I'm looking at it. Right there. It also emulates PS1, but it does that more as a novelty than anything else. You got choppy frame rate and pretty noticeable screen tear, so PS1 emulation is not going to be something you're going to be wanting to do on this thing. But I absolutely love this form factor, which is probably the main selling point. It resembles the original Game Boy, and if you're looking for a portable Game Boy / Game Boy Advance, this is probably your best bet. There are, like I mentioned, issues with screen tearing, but if you're looking at portable emulation for under 50 bucks, that's pretty much unavoidable. One of the advantages the PocketGo has over the PSPgo is that if you buy a PSP, you're going, unless you buy it pre-modded, you're going to have to mod it. You're going to have to tinker with it to allow it to run unsigned code, meaning emulators, or pirated games if that's what you want to do. I mean, that's what people did back when the PSP was a thing. So I can't pretend that that's not what you're going to do if you have a modded PSP. So that requires a little bit of research, a little bit of legwork, and if you're not a tech-savvy person, modding the PSPgo might seem like a daunting task. And I know this because I get tons of emails and comments from people who tell me that they would love to buy a PSP, but they can't find a modded PSP locally, and they don't know how to mod it. Now, yes, there are lots of resources online. There are tons of videos online that walk you through the entire process, all but literally holding your hand. But again, for people who don't really know their way around computers, even that just seems too complicated. So if you want something that out of the box is going to run everything, or almost everything you want to run, the PocketGo is probably, the screen went off. It's got a timer to save battery, so after 2 minutes of inactivity, which you can customize, the screen will go off. So I'm gonna have to keep pressing the reset button here on the top to bring it back on. As I was saying, if you're looking for the easiest way to get into portable emulation, the PocketGo is probably a better choice than the PSPgo if you can't buy one that's already pre-modded. Now, if we go into the build quality, I mean, obviously the PSPgo will take that one. The PSPgo is super solidly built. It's beautiful, I think, anyway. And it's, I mean, obviously a lot more went into making this thing than this thing, so you can't reasonably expect for this thing to have a better build quality than a PSPgo. When you pick up the PSPgo, you feel like there's a lot more to it. There's some metal in here. It just feels more premium. Of course, that comes at a price. It's hard to find PSPgos for under 100 bucks these days, and the white one can go up to $200. I managed to pick this up at a crazy deal for like 80 bucks Canadian, mind you, so not even real dollars. But it's really, really, really hard to find good deals like that on the PSPgo, especially the white one. So again, you're looking at products that aren't exactly in the same price bracket. This one is closer to twice the cost of the PocketGo. So obviously you're going to expect things like better build quality and better performance. That's the thing. Though say SNES emulation isn't perfect on the PSPgo, you have some stuttering on some titles, you have some screen tearing depending on the game, it will run most games better than the PocketGo. That's, I mean, you get what you pay for. Also, if you're looking to get into PS1 emulation, then there's no contest. You're going to want to go with the PSPgo. Though PS1 emulation on the PSPgo is also not perfect, not because of performance issues, but because of a lack of controls. You only have L and R here on the PSPgo. To perfectly emulate PS1 titles, you need 4 shoulder buttons. Now, of course, there's ways around that. You can map the missing buttons to combinations like up and triangle or whatever. I forget which ones they are because lately I haven't been emulating a lot of PS1 titles on my PSP. But they are playable. They are playable. Definitely more playable than on the PocketGo, where you're going to run into performance issues and you also only have 2 shoulder buttons on that anyway. Now, one thing that's important to note is battery life. Now, they last about the same. I haven't run a stress test on anything I own for a long time, but they're rated at about the same. The PSPgo was originally listed at between 3 to 6 hours of gameplay, depending, of course, on certain factors like the intensity of the game. If the processor is working harder, that's going to use more battery, volume, the brightness level of the screen. So realistically, I would go, let's say 3 to 4 hours. That's what the PSPgo would likely last. The PocketGo lasts about the same, leaning more towards the 3-hour end of the spectrum. But there's one very important distinction. Every PSPgo out there is secondhand, and that means that battery has run through a few cycles, which means it's old and likely doesn't hold the same amount of charge it used to. Now, of course, you might look out and pick one where the owner didn't play that much, but by and large, likely this thing right here is going to last you longer than the PSPgo. But generally speaking, the battery on the PocketGo is likely going to last longer than the battery on the PSPgo you happen to pick up, say, today. Another disadvantage the PSPgo has is this thing right here. A dreaded proprietary connection for charging the battery and transferring files over from your computer. Now, proprietary connectors are the bane of any tech lover's existence. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. Everybody hates them. There's no reason for these things to even exist, really, when you think about it. I have 2 PSP charging cables because I have 2 PSPgos, but this is going to be a problem. If you happen to lose or damage that cable, you're going to be out of luck for a little while until you eBay yourself a new one. The PocketGo, on the other hand, uses a standard micro USB connection, meaning you probably have 1,000 of those cables lying around. When it comes to comfort level using these things to actually play around, I would imagine that the PocketGo is probably preferred by most people because though it's a little bit small, it's kind of like a GBA, the original Game Boy Advance, so the grip is pretty satisfying if, you know, a little on the small side, though people who are into portability would probably not fault it for that. The PSPgo, on the other hand, I never had a problem with it, but some people, a lot of people in fact, say that it's not super comfortable. The position of the analog stick is kind of odd, and the fact that your fingers are constantly brushing up against the back of the screen when you're using the shoulder buttons, and plus you got that frail ribbon cable connection which actually connects the screen to the bottom part here. So I've heard so many horror stories about the ribbon cable getting torn and then, you know, you just broke your PSPgo. I have 2 and that hasn't happened yet, fingers crossed, but that is something to keep in mind. The PocketGo will likely last you longer than the PSPgo would because fewer moving parts. Ultimately, both the PocketGo and the PSPgo are awesome little portable emulation devices. The PocketGo is definitely cheaper, though that shows in some departments. Performance isn't that great, build quality is not going to match something produced by Sony, obviously, but they're both pretty awesome. They run a lot of games really well. They are both very, very portable, so if portability is a thing for you, you can't go wrong with either one of them. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for, and if you get a PSPgo, you're going to be able to emulate a lot more games better than the PocketGo. But for under 50 bucks, it's even with all its flaws, it's hard not to recommend this thing. I like it quite a bit, and the fact that it looks like a Game Boy is a huge plus for me. But what do you think? Which of these two would you go for? Do you have both? Which one do you find yourself playing more often on? Let me know as always in the comments down below. If you're new here, consider subscribing. That helps the channel so very much. Share this video with a friend who's into portable emulation, retro gaming. That also helps the channel like crazy. Follow me on social media. I'm very active on both Twitter and Instagram, constantly posting pictures of my collection and behind the scenes stuff, you know. Let me know where you're watching these videos from. That's fascinating to me. I hear from people, there's a lot of people watching me from countries I just flat out wouldn't expect, and to me that's priceless. So let me know where you're watching these from. And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy and I'm done.